I don't know if you've ever felt this yourself or thought this yourself, but when I was a creative, I used to think that fear, in a weird, fucked up way, was my superpower. I used to think that without fear, I wouldn't come up with great ideas. I used to think that without fear, my ideas would get small and they just wouldn't bubble up to the surface as much as they did when I was fearful, scared, and I was stressed out. As much as I didn't like the stress, and I quite frankly fucking hated the anxiety, I kind of didn't want to lose it. I was terrified of losing it in case a part of me, that creative part of me, died. And talking of a part of me dying, I want to tell you something I wish I'd been told when I was a creative, and that's a thing called cortisol. So you'll know that when you're stressed out, your body releases adrenaline. You get that adrenaline dump, your mouth goes dry and all that kind of stuff. But there's a second stress hormone that gets released when you get stressed out and you're fearful, and that's cortisol. Now, adrenaline gets a really bad rep in the world of psychology, in the world of performance, and all of that kind of stuff. We say, oh, it's adrenaline junkie and yada, 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 and adrenaline burns you out. But it's actually cortisol that's the worst stress hormone. Adrenaline leaves your system pretty damn quickly, whereas cortisol hangs about in your system for a very long time. Now, another thing about cortisol is that within every nerve, muscle, fiber, and neuron of your mind and body, there are things called cortisol receptors. And these cortisol receptors, they allow cortisol to attach itself to the receptors. So, which means essentially that cortisol gets to every single nook and cranny of your brain and body. Now, here's a thing that's really pertinent to creativity. As a creative, your brain is the most valuable tool you possess. I'm sure you would agree. More valuable than your Mac, more valuable than a packet of post-it notes and all that kind of stuff. Without your brain, you ain't got the great ideas. Now, here's the thing with cortisol. We know that when we have too much cortisol floating about in our brain, it actually causes cells within the brain to commit suicide. It overstimulates brain cells and it causes them to commit suicide. This happens especially in a part of your brain called your hippocampus. Now, your hippocampus is responsible for laying down and recalling long-term memory. So here's the thing with creativity. If your hippocampus starts getting smaller because you've got a lot of cortisol floating around it, it's harder for you to access memory. Think about this as a creative. Creativity is when we take old, unused, misunderstood ideas of the past, i.e. memories, and collide them unconsciously into something new, different and special, and then we consciously become aware of it, that aha moment, we create something new. If you are less able to access the memory, you are going to reduce your creativity. So the point of this story is this: fear was not my superpower and stress was most definitely not helping me out. You need to know where is the balance point where it stops doing good stuff and starts doing damage. And you need to stop that shit happening. I hadn't done that when I was a creative and I got brain fog and all that kind of stuff. Ideas became smaller. I learned how to do it. I'd like you to learn how to do it too. First step is knowledge and information. Understand it's happening, then we can work on stopping it happening.